What's up, mi gente? It's Anthony Rosa, Mr. Remedy, and you are watching another show on the Roundtable Remedies. And I'm super excited. Today we have an amazing cast, an amazing conversation talking about power in patience. And I'm going to be honest with you, this is not one of my strengths, probably one of my weaknesses, but we're here to talk about it, air out our laundry, and we hope that with our conversation, we can inspire, connect, and educate you from these real people and real stories. But first, I would love for our cast to just introduce themselves and speaker rotation. Up first, Principal Gordon.
Well, thanks a lot, Anthony Rosa, for the invitation to be on Roundtable Remedies and talking about the power and patience. I'm Principal Edward Gordon, CEO of Gordon Leadership Academy. We provide coaching and mentoring training assessments for aspiring and current school principals and superintendents, and also the founder of Gordon Leadership Foundation, where we provide coaching and mentoring for school leaders and educators in about 40 developing countries. So we're excited to be here this evening and talking about the power and patience. Thanks a lot, Anthony, for the invitation.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. And then next in speaker rotation, Michael.
Thanks for having me on, Anthony. This is great. Great opportunity. My name is Mike Stackhouse. I'm an attorney with 10 years executive experience here in New Jersey. I focus mainly in estate planning. I have a partner here out of Waldwick, New Jersey. Looking forward to having fun here on the podcast and talking about patience today. Thank you, Anthony.
Yeah, absolutely. And then anchoring us in, Ed Lattimore. Ed?
Hey, yeah, Anthony, man, thank you for having me here to talk about power and patience and how we can use that to change our lives. My background, real quick, I'm a writer. I'm right now working on my third book, set to be released in 2025. The publishing industry is notoriously slow, but it's all good and it's all coming along. The book is a memoir about my life growing up in the projects, dealing with alcoholism and abuse, and then finding change through boxing and the military and using that to go back to school and help put a message out there to help people do the same.
Absolutely. And, I appreciate you all coming on and sharing and being vulnerable tonight. Roundtable Remedies was created really to share these messages, these stories. And all year long, we've had different topics. In January, we started talking about resilience. In February, we talked about gratitude. Then we talked about self-care, acceptance. And all month long in August, we've been talking about patience. And so when you guys think of patience, for those that are watching, what comes to mind? Do you suffer from road rage? Do you have little children that kind of just get on your nerves sometimes? Let's be honest, right? Or do you have a spouse that's like a dripping faucet? No offense to any spouses. But patience, they say, is a virtue. And it's something that can actually be a medicine. And after today's show, I'm hoping that you guys can learn a few remedies on how to practice patience. Okay? So when we get into this conversation, Gordon, I would love to know your thoughts on patience. So when you think of the power in patience, what comes to mind?
Yeah, when I think about the power and patience, I think it starts with some knowledge and some understanding. And when you understand situations, understand people, understand individuals, then you're going to have opportunity to practice patience in the situation. So I think that, I have many stories throughout my life and career that I can talk about patience. But one thing I wanted to bring up, we're joking behind the scenes with Ed as well as Michael about being fathers and having young children. I was telling them that they're starting off and I'm at the end of the rainbow. And I have a 22-year-old son. But my son, at the age of 2, was diagnosed and on the spectrum of autism. And he was saying, mama, dad, and so forth. And then at the age of 2, just stopped talking. And that was a shock for us and a surprise. And we were trying to figure things out and how to support him and how to be able to help in terms of his development. And I just remember, like it was yesterday, he was on the floor and I was giving him some directions to do. And I must have gave him about 4 directions at the same time. And the only thing that my son was doing was just spinning around in a circle. It was overwhelming for him. It's too much information at the one time. And that's where I really had to understand and learn the fact that when you're talking to a child that's on the spectrum of autism, that you have to keep things very simple and one direction at a time, so that they understand it and actually take action. And then you can give them the second direction when they're done. That is something that I had to learn. Okay. And once I had the knowledge, I was more patient with how I was communicating with him, and also patient with what he was able to produce. And that's why I believe that knowledge is really key to understand individuals, understand situations. And when you do that, you become aware and patient with the process, the development, and also the execution of others as you go on this journey. So that is something that I experienced, especially in my personal life. And I just wanted to share that as one of the many lessons I've learned about patience.
Yeah, I mean, you touched upon a really important topic. Just as parents, for those that are watching on the live, I would love for you to put down your thoughts. You know, are kids a trigger, right? How many times do we have to tell them things for them to react? Michael, I see you shaking your head. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely, Anthony. Thank you. I was actually thinking of a different direction at first when talking points like about talk about clients and things like that. But Ed, that's a great point. Our kids, like patience is just something that I thought I had good patience. I thought I worked really well with my clients. I have a good ear for people. I like to listen to their perspective, their goals. I'd like to get to the bottom of it. I'm very thorough. But with my son, I see a mirror of me back. And, and a lot of times you don't know what to do. And you do your best to not let yourself get angry or over emotional or surprised too much, because, that's when it triggers, that'll trigger them. In particular, it triggers my son. Big reactions every time. So I've had to kind of take steps back, kind of tone it down, kind of calm it all down a little bit, and try to bring some more patience into my own life, which I didn't think I had it in me there for that. But each day is a challenge, and not every day is perfect, right? So we
No,
keep learning.
you're right. I was doing some research about this, and patience, right? Just there's a chemical imbalance in the brain that occurs when a person either has too much or too little neurotransmitters. And I was reading this and I'm like, okay, what does that mean? So in our brain, there's constantly different messages, and we have happy hormones, and these different messages play different roles, right? And obviously, mental health is real. Depression is real. Anxiety is real. And we develop this over time because these chemical imbalances. And so what I had to learn was some ways on how to take a deep breath before I react, right? So with my kids, I learned that rather than yelling because they'll shut down or be quiet or won't respond, I'll whisper. And sometimes, my girl would say, hey, as a man, you have that bass, you have a tone in your voice. And I'm like, listen, kids, I'm telling you things more than once. I'm saying it nice. But when is it okay for patience to run out? Here I'm going, all right, I'm backtracking again, right? you know, Principal Gordon, what are some of your thoughts, just kind of dealing in the educational realm with patience? How do people practice patience at home and at school?
Yeah, so you bring up a good point. We can understand about patience and the importance of patience, and how if we overreact or are too forceful, how it can affect the emotions and feelings of others. But I think we also have to give ourselves grace, because we all come to our end, the end of our rope. It could be other situations in our mind or so forth, and we lose it. Okay. But when that happens, we got to give ourselves grace. And we also, when we see it in others, give others grace. And the key thing is always, developing these strategies, breathing strategies, strategies to not say anything right now, just to walk away. We have to have several things in our toolbox. And I always tell my teachers and school leaders, got to have these tools in your toolbox to be able to handle different situations. Because if you do not have these tools, you will lose it every day. Okay. Every situation, doesn't matter if it's with your child, doesn't matter if your spouse or your partner, doesn't matter if it's your client or coworker. You need to understand this, increase your knowledge, and increase your tools to be able to handle those different situations. But if you ever lose it, give yourself grace, and also give it the grace to others.
I love that, right? Because it's kind of hard. Sometimes you could be patient with others, but you don't give yourself that grace. You know, Ed, what are some of your thoughts just kind of regarding giving yourself grace? I had a trouble with saying things like, I'm stupid, or I'm so dumb, right? If I had been a little bit more patient with myself, maybe I wouldn't be talking to myself in these manners, right? I had to unlearn some of these things, to unlearn some of just kind of like linear thinking. So Ed, what are some of your thoughts just kind of in this conversation?
My first thought when I hear our struggles with reacting to others and giving people grace, one of the things that I it's not even my idea really. Like when you look at the way the brain works, your amygdala is that part of your brain that fires up when you're stressed, overwhelmed, scared, that type of thing, and you want to react instantly. And the inverse relationship to that is in your prefrontal cortex. That'll shrink. That's the part of your brain that plans and makes decisions and helps you think and decide the best way to go. And so, what has always worked for me that's kept me from saying things that would be unsayable, you can't take them back, or doing things
Mm,
that would have that would be unrepairable, is to calm down and get in that space between stimulus and reaction and just think for a moment. And it doesn't have to be a crazy thought. It can be as simple as breathing and considering yourself, even if you can't bring yourself to consider the other person. And that thought right then and there, that's going to make your like from a neurophysiological perspective, that will tamp down your amygdala reaction. That's the part of your brain that's concerned with fight or flight too. And what are a lot of these reactions to stress? It's I need to handle this now or run away from it. And it's like, no, let's think. Let's try and consider what would happen if we said something crazy. And even if we can't do that, let's just think in general, calm down, because the first reaction is almost never the best one. And this requires patience because it's very cathartic to just want to express yourself and express your frustration. But that's an illusion, really. We think that's going to change things for the better, and it just makes us feel better in the moment. But then the aftermath of the other person feeling worse and reacting that's always rough. So one of the things I do for myself, and I try to tell other people, is just one in terms of patience. One, just take just a few seconds. It doesn't have to be much, but just a few, and not let the first thing that you think come out of your mouth or the first thing you imagine you do. And then think about this situation from the perspective of how are we going to salvage it, not how are we going to make me feel better. And if you can do that, you end up usually at the worst case scenario, you don't end up making things worse, and that always leaves room to make things better.
oh yeah. I mean, look, if I had $1 for every time I did something and I regretted it out of patience or anger, I probably would retire already, you know? And sometimes I get into this, watching TikTok shorts. I don't know if you guys do it. And there was this one short of somebody in Florida. Of course, they were driving on a highway and it was a red light. And the guy just, was driving too slow and he was getting impatient, threw something at the car. The guy gets out with a gun and now he gets out with a weapon and they're arguing. And I'm like, and then I just passed it. I didn't even want to see it to what happened to the end. And I'm just like, wow, I remember one time that I'm driving and I had somebody high beaming me. I move over to the side. I roll down my window. I kid you not. I had a bottle of water in my hand. This was many years ago. I was going to throw it at the car. I was so angry. I had no patience. It's nighttime. Why are you high beaming me? I go behind him. I high beam him. And then he flashes his light. It was a cop. Thank God I didn't throw that bottle at the car. But patience is definitely something that I'm just trying to work on. So Ed, you had a comment?
You remember this, man? You can ruin your entire life because you let yourself lose patience in a second. Your entire life, and we're not just talking about every time I see a road rage incident, I'm just like, all this could have been completely avoided if someone, doesn't matter whether it was the initiator or the one being antagonized, if someone just said, is it worth it? And at first, you don't feel like you should do that, but you just got to calm down and go, what could happen? I always tell people, you never know who cares about going to jail. Because there's a lot of people that don't care, and you never know which guy you're dealing with. I thought about a story I always tell people to illustrate this point. Like 6 or 7 years ago, maybe even longer than that, I was walking to the parking lot into Best Buy, and this kid comes walking towards me with his girl, and his girl was dressed, scantily, and he thought I was eyeballing her. So he leans in and he goes, "Yo, what the fuck are you looking at?" And I'm looking at, I'm not a small man. I'm like 6'1". I was in the middle of training too. I'm like 6'1", like 225, and like ripped. And this kid couldn't have been any bigger than like 5'8", maybe 160 pounds wet. So my first thought, and this is probably just from how I grew up, my first thought was, if this guy is this comfortable getting at me like this, he must know something about the balance of force that I don't, and it's probably not my favorite. So I just kept it moving. I didn't need to and I don't know if he was packing or what. I didn't need to find out, because even if he wasn't packing, maybe he steps to me and I put him down and he dies when his head hit the concrete. Now I got to deal with a manslaughter charge, an involuntary manslaughter charge, or go prove that it was self-defense. And while I'm a big fan of it's better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6, I'd rather not be in any situation like that. Either way.
Judged by 12 or carried by 6. I like that. You didn't have to say too much there with that little ending. I knew what you meant, though. And, I know somebody personally that had got caught up for exactly what you just said in real life, and it's crazy, the world that we live in. And so patience is absolutely a virtue, and it's something that we got to practice more. And with my pastor, I always used to pray for patience. But you know what? Opportunities of patience just kept coming. And I'm like, I'm praying for patience. I'm failing 100%. I spoke with my pastor and he said, you know what? Stop praying for patience. Pray for strength. Pray for strength in those moments to not react. Pray for strength to not overreact. And that's something that I'm trying to work on. And for those that are watching on the live, if you have some struggle with patience, please feel free to share, because this is an open format. And Ed, I really appreciate you getting this conversation started. Don't go nowhere into the final thoughts segment. We have a lot to talk about. And again, thank you so much. Michael, when you think of power and patience, what comes to mind?
Well, I think of strategy and I think of timing, because I think patience and when it comes down to the fundamentals of it all is a decision to choose your timing. So for me, that means it's a strategy. You're using it for some kind of end. And that being said, it can be used for different things. I was saying earlier, some of the ways I deal patience, I work patience into my practice in my office is through deep conversations with my clients. There's a lot of stuff. Sometimes the clients need to just get off their chest. And that's kind of the reason why as attorneys have that ability to keep secrets, so people can feel free to say those things that they need to say. I don't think they really teach us this in law school at all, but as the years have gone on, I've just learned that there's a reason they call us counselor, and we don't get any psych degrees in law school. But we have to kind of serve as a kind of like outside help, and just so people can actually like vocalize like their goals and what they really want, because then we got to put them down on paper, and that's what I get paid for, really.
Right.
Just putting down what people really want on paper for my estate planning in particular. When I was when I was doing trial attorney work more, like personal injury, I found patients be very helpful in dealing with the insurance companies, because those guys, man, the claims just the claim stuff just drags on, and they'll move you from person to person, and one of the things we used to do as a tactic was kind of just like talk with the person, be patient with them as well. They want to settle the case sometimes because they know they can't do it, But you just got to continue working with that same person, try and move up the chain, and keep open line of communication to get to a middle ground. And that kind of patience pays off in the long term for negotiation tactics, because we're all trading back and forth on goodwill. I found in actual trial work though, it was a lot more proactive. So like, for example, you would see patients served me as a strategy, probably best in like cross-examination of a defendant. Just a timing with things like, when you time a question, be patient when they're answering. So sometimes they'll reveal more than they need to. And that can really help your case. Another example would be using medical witness, a live medical testimony, like a car accident cases. You want to be very patient with the doctor, because sometimes if they're not practiced and polished, then it's going to be hard for them to get out what happened to the person, because they're so used to using medical jargon for everything.
Right.
But it's overcomable with patience again.
Right.
Another way, one last way I found it in trial was objections. You really were able to work it in against opposing counsel through objections, timing. Your patience on timing one can really knock someone off their horse if they think they got something going. And it was fun to watch a little bit. There's a little bit of gamesmanship between attorneys, I think. No hard feelings. I don't think I'd buy someone a beer if I had to, but no one's ever came to collect. But yeah, I think patience is many things, but I think most of all a strategy. I think a choice in timing is the best way I could find a way to put it.
I don't know why, as you're talking, Michael, I get the Jim Carrey liar liar in the court. You can't handle the truth. What I'm hearing from you, Michael, though, talking about patience from an attorney's point of view, is you learn to be a good listener.
Yes, definitely.
And one thing that is stood out is slow down.
Yes.
Right. And you talked about timing and strategy. For me, what comes to mind is practicing mindfulness.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because everybody has a destination to go, but they don't really care sometimes who's in the way or how they get there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I'll give you an example. You're going to a mall, somebody's coming out of a parking spot. You've been there waiting. Somebody just comes around the corner, sees them coming out, and takes it right in front of you.
Oh, boy.
Like, oh! How would that make you feel? You said, oh, boy, what?
Oh, that's hard. That's the hard time to practice patience, right? That's the, you gotta control that anger, especially if you're waiting there with your blinker on.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's happened to me at Garden State before. That's probably happened to everybody at Garden State.
Hey, I was thinking about Garden State. It's funny that you say that, right? So another point I'm hearing is you got to identify what triggers you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you do. Certain
things, if you don't identify what triggers you, you're not practicing mindfulness. You're not a good listener. You're not slowing down. Hey, it's an eruption, a volcano eruption waiting to happen.
Absolutely. You got to be mindful. You got to see where you are.
Ed, I see you nodding your head. What are your thoughts?
I tell people all the time that if you learn to listen to somebody, they'll tell you everything that you will need to know. The hard part is we want things to happen quickly, so we try to extract information from someone in these direct, brutal methods. And I don't mean brutal like torture, but I mean like not with a gift of charm, I guess, where you can speak to someone and they want to tell you things, opposed to feeling forced and compelled to. And I would imagine from a legal perspective that it's a lot better if you can get someone to just give you information than it is to have to not beat it out of them, because I don't mean you can't do that legally, but to kind of force it out of them. I listen to a lot of these murder podcasts, man. 48 Hours is my favorite one right now, and it's amazing just listening to the interview tactics. You would think these guys are really down, man. Like yeah, So tell me how that worked. What did it feel like when you was cutting her up, man? Didn't you get sick? Like, oh no, and they'll just go. And I'm sitting here like, this is brilliant because I know if it was me, I would just shut up. But maybe that's what everyone thinks until they're in there and they're offering you coffee or whatever. But hearing that is a uh, a powerful tactic that is employed by the legal side consciously to the point where you end up being better, having a better understanding of human psychology than licensed counselors, not licensed with a Juris Doctor, but licensed, with a psych degree is fascinating to just hear from you.
Right. So, Michael, you're really good at litigation, huh? You kind of get what you want.
Well, I've had my ups and downs. So what happens most times, you're led by your facts. Your facts in your case can be your strongest thing. There's an old saying that if you don't got the facts, you argue the law. If you don't got the law, argue the facts. So that kind of stands. It really does. If your case is good, you tend to win. I've had some cases that weren't as good as they're strong as they should have been, maybe. So you win some, you lose some. But I try to get the most I can. And it's tough because you're facing people of equal skill level most of the time, if not more. I know when I was doing most of my trial work, I was facing guys with a lot more experience, but I had more time, so I could dedicate more time to getting ready than they would because they're spread a little more thin. So I knew that would be my major my major benefit, but I tried.
So a big remedy for those that are looking for kind of legal assistance is get an attorney that's patient. That's what you're saying?
Oh, I'd say absolutely. If your attorney doesn't have patience with you, at the very least, then may not be the person for you.
Gordon, I see you nodding your head. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm listening to Michael. I'm listening. Michael was talking about strategy, and I listened to Ed, and he posed a lot of questions. And when I'm listening to both of them, I'm thinking about a strategy. I think that is going to be key. That I tell my educators and leaders is about reflection. I coach them to actually have a journal. It can be a notebook that they have. It could be through their laptop. It could be through their computer. But actually write down like the conversations you had today, the interactions you had with people, and so forth. And at the end of the day, review your notes and really look at, did I approach or have a conversation with my child that was that I really was listening, really wanted to hear? Did I have a conversation with my spouse that I really heard what she was saying? Um, how was that conversation, that meeting that I had with this client, and so forth? And I think that when we are intentional about reflecting and writing down, taking notes, and actually going back and see how we did in the course of the day, I think that gives us opportunity to correct and look at and identify where we need to grow, to be even more patient, be a better listener. And also, when you're reflecting, like Michael was saying, it allows you to think through the plan, the strategy for next time or in a future meeting and so forth. So that word reflection was very key when Michael was talking, as well as Ed was posing several questions. I think that's the practice that we definitely have to get into if we want to be able to improve the patience that we have for ourselves as well as others.
Yeah, you bring a really good point about journaling. I started this a couple months back with my kids, writing their favorite part of the day. And I really enjoy it. Listening to what's their favorite part of the day. Why is that their favorite part of the day? And what are they thankful for? And my kids are 11, 9, 6, 3, and 9 months. Of course, the oldest two are writing, and so they're kind of practicing this journal exercise. And it's really nice to reflect. And then I read it, and I was like, okay, what can I have done better? It's like, hey, I noticed that I'm not in their favorite part of the day, so I got to do something a little bit more with them, right? Maybe I was working too much, and every time they asked to play with me, I'm like, oh, I'm busy working. I'm sorry, I'll be right there. And then you just do that after compound, compound, compound. He's like, well, my kids are being patient, but how long will they be patient with me because of that same reaction? And so when you're talking about time to reflect, journal, and unpack, for me, I'm reflecting as a parent, and I agree 100%. You know, Michael, what are your thoughts about that?
I personally I don't do much journaling, but I definitely do a lot of reflection. I do a lot of reflection, meditation, um, either through my yoga practice or through prayer. And I try to I do things like that like the same way. I try to do it in a way where I go over each day or with myself. But I like the what you said about the making the journal, asking your children like, "Hey, what was the best part of your day?" I never had anything like that growing up, and just thinking that's an awesome idea. I might have to steal it from you, Anthony. I'm not gonna lie.
I don't know where it came from. I
Michael, he got it from me. He didn't. He didn't
There
know.
you go. I got it from Principal Gordon. He gave me the remedy. You know, we
I
have
like that.
somebody engaging with us. We got my fraternity brother Gerard saying hi. What's up, brother? How are you? He got a nice, beautiful, growing family. The conversation is around patience, and I have a question. Are you challenged by being patient? Please feel free to like, comment, engage, and thanks for watching. Michael, thank you so much. Don't go anywhere until that final thought segment. And Ed, anchoring us in for the night. What are your thoughts when we're talking about power in patience?
The first thing that immediately comes to mind to me is I think about recovery. What a lot of people who fail or relapse, I guess is probably a better way to say it. A lot of people who relapse, what they forget is that there's a reason why it's one day at a time for a reason. I've got this December it'll be 11 years since I had a drink, and you don't get to.
Congratulations.
Thank you. You don't get to 11 years or any amount of time really by thinking that it's going to be a quick fix and expecting to feel better immediately. A lot of people, quit drinking for like a month and they still feel like trash, and they're like, what's the point? Or they don't feel they still feel tempted by their old environment and their old habits, and they're like, "This, I thought this was going to be easier. It's only, you're only 2 months in, man. Like, what? It took you've been doing this most of your life. You don't just suddenly flick the switch." And so, a lot of not a lot, any change you make in your life, you're going to make the decision in an instant, and you're going to change your mind. It's going to take a very long time for reality to reflect your new perspective of it. Like that whole thing. You change what you see, and what you see changes. Well, they don't tell you is it's not that fast. It takes a while, and you have to be patient. And you have to stick with something because you have faith in it, and in the purest sense of the word, not in an overly religious sense or anything else. You have to believe that what you're doing is the best thing that you need to do, and that's the only way you're going to stick to the course. If that's what gives you patience, uh, and I think that's what gives most of us patience when we're talking about dealing with our children, for example. Um, aside from it just being like not the best thing to do to like lose your cool with your kids, a lot of us are coming from childhoods where our parents were like a wreck in some sort, and what you're trying to do is avoid setting your children up to have to deal with what you had to deal with to get into a place where you were a competent human. At least that's my story. And so what you're trying to do when you behave with that patience, when you temper your words. You're doing this in the faith that you're for something you won't see for years, which is a psychologically and emotionally healthy child. And it's the same way with changing anything in your life or creating any positive outcome. You're being patient so you can see it happen in the future. And if you want it too quickly, you're pretty much guaranteed you don't get it at all because it won't come quickly. Anything worth having never comes quickly, and so we were patient so we can get the things we want, and that's guided me through every decision I think about over the past 11 to 12 years that has made a massive difference in my life, and got me out of the place where I was at, is just thinking that I'll tell you a story actually just to illustrate this. Right before I stopped drinking, I was just sitting at a bar chilling with some people, and I was thinking about the future. I hadn't even gone back to school yet. I hadn't turned pro yet or anything, and I was just like, you know what, 5 years is going to pass no matter what, God willing, right? And in 5 years, am I going to have more options or fewer options in my life? And I said, all right, well, I get to make that choice, but 5 years is going, that's 5 years to see the result. Um, at the minimum, I was just thinking that's how I was thinking of it. And whether it took 5 or 7 or 3 or whatever, the whole point was that I was like, all right, well, how I'm living now ain't good, and I want to have a better life. And that time in between, I got to be patient and stick to the plan. And that patience, what do they say, is not but a refined sense of confidence.
Mm.
Uh, and so, yeah, my thought about patience is that that's the missing ingredient for anything that you want in your life that you don't have right now. I mean, now granted, that's like the foundation. Obviously, you got to do the work and make the sacrifices, the
Of course,
grind, and all that.
of course.
But the only reason why you do that is because you'll believe it will pay off, not it pays off immediately.
Right. So I have a question. Have you been always patient with yourself? You talked about 11 years sober, and again, congratulations. And with your background, going pro. So, how did you go from this mindset? How did you get to this mindset?
Well, first, like the mindset was a survival tactic at first. It really was. It was a survival tactic at home and a survival tactic at school, which is like, can't lash out here because somebody gonna want my ass. Somebody can't lash out there, because many people will. So I learned to control myself because there were real negative consequences for doing so. But then once those negative consequences were removed and I was in a safer environment, you carry the residue of your upbringing with you, but it doesn't stick, and it doesn't stick in another way, which is really interesting to me when I think about this, which is like I failed high school. First time I tried to go to college, I failed it, and it's because I had this distorted sense of how of the effort required to succeed. And so I don't think I was lazy per se. I think it was this fixed mindset, and I didn't think I could improve, and I didn't think I could grow. I didn't think there was any point in putting the effort in. Uh, Once I ran into that initial wall, and that all changed when I started boxing, and I did the smartest thing I think anyone can ever do. I didn't start fighting until I was 22. It would have been real easy for me to just. A lot of people don't know this open secret of boxing, though. Anyone can go pro. You just go down to your commission. You fill out the paperwork, and look, they'll put you in there with somebody to get beat up for like $200-300. But there won't be much of your career. I've seen a lot of guys do that. I didn't do that. I fought. I did amateur boxing for 4 years. I thought, yeah, 4 years. Um, and in doing that, you're not making any money. I was fortunate in my career. I got a sponsorship eventually, but I didn't expect to. But I put the reps in and got like 60 something fights where I learned, learn, 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 learn. And then when I turned pro, I'm like, oh, promised land. Nope. You get there, and then you got to now you're fighting bums again. Well, not even again. The guys in the amateur ranks are way better for different reasons. But it's for no money, and there's no promotion or anything like that behind you. You have to earn that. And so I fought, and then eventually earn that. And all this time I'm like, wow, all I got to do is like be diligent and practice and keep going at things. And so like that really taught me a lot. And then, people think I'm crazy when I tell them this, but because of that experience, seeing how that happened, and I was like, I mean, I'm a bigger guy naturally. I put on muscle easily, but the coordination thing, I'm probably the only brother you ever meet. I can't cross a basketball to save my life, and don't put me on a free throw line. It's awful. I have no coordination. But through fighting, I turned into, I won a national championship as an amateur, and I said, wow, if I can go from being nothing to this, can I do this with my mind? Remember, I failed high school, but I then decided to put the practice and the repetitions in the same way I did in sports. I did that for math, and eventually, that 5 years passed, and I got my degree in physics at 33. And that's not like a degree
Yeah.
you can't just phone that in. Like I had to, be in there and do some stuff and get my
From a
ego
high
dragged a
school,
few times.
from failing high school to getting your physics college degree. What a comeback story.
Yeah, it feels really weird, but I know that the only the two reasons why it happened, and I think anyone can do it. One, I I always say this, the greatest belief you can have is that given enough time, you can learn anything, which is just another way with more words of saying be patient. It's another way of saying, you got to do the work, and you only do the work when you have faith it'll pay off, that it will pay off, and that is another aspect of patience. So patience and faith, and really, there are some things I say to a lot of people because I speak on these topics and I write about them, and so a lot of these ideas are in my head. But that idea right there, I never connected it to this conversation. That patience and faith go hand in hand. When you
Mm.
have one, it's easy to have the other, and vice versa.
Wow. So you're working on a new book coming out in 2025. And are you making a comeback in anything?
I'm only laughing because we were talking about the publishing industry at the beginning being slow. Goodness, you talk about patience. Oh,
Yeah. So you
That's
got
the
a couple
trusting
of
your
things that are
patience.
going on, right? 2025, you got the book. Are there any other comebacks that you're working on in the near future?
I'm planning on fighting again. And I'm really curious to see how. I mean, like I say that because that's my self efficacy, humility coming in. I'm really curious to see how it'll go because I haven't fought in 8 years, so I don't have any damage, and I don't think if this is going to be the big surprise, the big fun part. We'll see at least. I don't think that being 40 is going to be a problem because I spent a lot of time understanding and coaching guys and seeing kind of what was wrong with or what is wrong with a lot of the way boxing is taught and delivered. And I put together my own training program. I want to take to my coach, and he'll take it and hopefully use it. But it'll be fun. We will see. That
Yeah.
is that is. Who knows? That I could be looking back on this conversation in 6 months, going, "Man, what the hell was I thinking?" But like, I don't think that'll happen. But you never know.
Right. And I think that I'm gonna put this post. There was a comment from brother Oscar, and he said, "Patience is a form of self-control." And I can only imagine with boxing, with going back to school, with staying sober, you had to practice some self-control there.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's easy when or not easy. It is. It's hard if you don't have that faith and that patience. But the other thing too that kind of contributes to all of this is the wisdom and discernment and knowing thyself. I changed my environment tremendously. If I didn't do that for the first 1 or 2 years, there's absolutely no way that these things would stick. Or rather, it'd be much more difficult because you're constantly fighting habits you've built up over a lifetime, and you can't just go, "Oh, I'm going to change it," and keep going back to everything else. What's that old saying, man? You hang around a trap house long enough, eventually you're going to smoke crack. Like eventually, you can't hang around the same stuff. It doesn't work that way. You got
Right.
to change your environment, and that'll really help you too. It's like like in the vein of patience. How are we gonna be patient people uh, if we're always around people that are not patient, that are angry, that are pushing our buttons? Now that doesn't mean that you can select your environment, but at the same time you have or rather that you can get rid of everyone who does not adhere to like this monk like discipline. No, it doesn't work like that. But what you can do is set your life up in a way to where when your patience is tested, and it's always tested because everybody's a sailor in clear seas. But it's only you only find out if you're patient when you need to be patient, and no other way around it. But that's the idea. You don't want to have too many of those moments too often.
It's true. Ed, I saw you, Gordon, I saw you nodding your head. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, the thought that comes up, when I was listening to Ed and what he was saying is that about two words. One is about vision, having an idea exactly what you want out of life and out of the situation, but also the other word is the why behind your work. Okay, what you're doing, and that's really going to drive you, and that's going to help you make some decisions about how you're going to get from where you are right now to where you want to go, but also I think that really is helping you to understand the process and being patient as you're developing and growing to get to where you're going. So those are some things and thoughts that came to my mind when I was listening to Ed talk about vision as well as having a strong, compelling why to actually get there.
I agree. And they say speed bumps are not meant to stop us, yet slow us down to see what's in our blind spot. And that when I think of vision, I think of vision and what's in my blind spot and what can cause an issue if I'm not patient. You know, Michael, I saw you nodding your head. What are some of your thoughts?
Oh, just my head's swimming with thoughts. I'm just thinking of the different things. I'm very impressed that you're gonna go back to fighting. That's awesome, man. Good luck to you. Yeah, patience being part of the grind is just so true. It really is. Every day, if you're trying to make a big goal, and to reach something, that patience is just there. It's going to be the hand in hand with that faith to get you to that goal. I see it now, and everything I've done that I feel like I've made an accomplishment and was done through that patience, faith, grind, and you get there. You have to plan. I mean, part of that's planning too, but it's all part of the big chain. That's really what I was thinking. I'm like, yeah, I feel a kindred spirit. I mean, that's how I got myself through law school. I grew up in a tough neighborhood in La Puente, California. Shout out to the donut hole, the only landmark there. And it was just a rough area. And I really got the benefit of high school, where it really, really grew who I was, my character. I went to Catholic high school, Bishop Alma, and we had a great football program. Took benefit of that. I didn't go to college right away. I thought I could do other things. Try to play football, different traveling teams, arena teams. Didn't go so well for me. But I found my way back to school with my mom's help. And it just clicked for me at the time. And it drove me all the way to law school. What's wrong right now?
I appreciate that. That was deep. That was vulnerable, and you're reminiscing and you're on reflecting, and this is what it's all about. We continue to reflect, and that I love how you put that. Patience and faith kind of go hand in hand, and if you're doing compounded good things will happen. I'm a firm believer of that. We're kind of sadly hitting third base. We're rounding it. We're getting into that part where it's the final thoughts segment of the show, where we're going to kind of go over and wrap up some of these remedies that we're talking about. So again, in speaker rotation, starting with Gordon, what are some of your final thoughts?
Yeah, definitely your awareness about where you are in that spectrum of patience at this current time is going to be key. If you rate yourself as a 5, that awareness is key. Now you know where you have to grow to get to that higher level. And I would say understanding where you are right now, give yourself grace. If you were at a 9 and one day something really set you off and you jump back down to a 1, give yourself grace, because this is a process, okay? Take it one day at a time. Those are my final thoughts.
Those are great final thoughts. Michael, final thoughts.
My final thoughts are going back to how I was talking about patience as a strategy. I think patience comes down to being a choice. I think that's really more where I should have went with that. And patience is a choice. It doesn't have to be a strategy. It can be a methodology. It can be hand in hand with faith. but I think it's something that we all need more of, and we can all learn from others' patients as well, and others can give it to us a little bit from time to time.
Yeah, I like that.
Thank
And
you.
Ed, rounding third base, anchoring us in. Final thoughts.
You got to have the patience to wait an eternity and the initiative to act in an instant. And I remind people of that because, it, you don't want to wait too long when it comes time to do things. There is a point where you have to do something, right? But the idea is to choose that point optimally, not too early and not too late. Too early, and you end up potentially ruining something. Too late, and you end up letting something get ruined. But that's the other part of the struggle with patience is that we have to know when it's time to not be patient, which is like kind of a counter idea to the whole thing. But I think it's an important part to discuss that if you wait too long, uh, then the whole point of patience, you almost lose it. But there are some things you have to I think we all as a human race could benefit tremendously from giving our fellow citizens a little more grace and not assume the worst and always try to see um, how we can delay our first response because that is almost never correct. Like almost ever. In fact, if I can leave you one parting suggestion, that is to learn to ruthlessly question your first instinct. That doesn't mean you don't follow it eventually, but learn to put it under a put a little break on it, look at it, and wait. And oftentimes you'll see that there was a better way.
I appreciate that. I read, if it doesn't excite you the first time, don't do it. And we all talked about so many important things tonight. I really appreciate you guys just coming on, being vulnerable and sharing. And again, Roundtable Remedies was created to inspire, connect, and educate you from real people, real stories. And Ed, you didn't know the quote of the show, but it was a perfect segue. Let me put this up for us. Quote of the show is brought to you by Ray Davis. Patience is not passive waiting. Patience is active acceptance of the process required to attain your goals and dreams. Boom.
I don't know Ray Davis, but great minds think alike, right?
Hey, speakers, don't go anywhere. Hang out with me in the afterglow. For those that are watching, go in grace, go in peace. This is Anthony Rosa, Mr. Remedy. Thank you for watching another show on the Roundtable Remedies. We'll see you soon. Peace out.